Loving it. This is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We have with us today a returning guest, New York Times best-selling author David Horowitz. His latest book is I Cannot Breathe, How a Racial Hoax, Hoax, is Killing America. And today, we're going to we always have a great interview when we do bring on David Horowitz, always. So today, he's raising the question, we're raising the question with him, what is happening with Black Lives Matter? What have they done with that, $60 million they've raised? Brother Horowitz, what's going on?
Well, Black Lives Matter is now and was from its very beginning a criminal organization. And we're not interested in Black lives. And they're, what do you call it? Acquiring of the $60 million and spending it on a mansion, which they bought from the Communist Party, because they're all communists. Squandering that money, buying homes for yourself, when there's all these people who have suffered. Now, not all of them, in fact, this book I've written, what I did with I Can't Breathe, is I went over every major case by going up first to the Black Lives Matter website, which was kicked off by the Trayvon Martin case, which happens to be the only one I have deviated from the entire conservative movement on. I've gotten most of my hate mail from conservatives who don't like the fact that I thought that Zimmerman should have been convicted of manslaughter.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he wasn't a cop. He was a neighborhood watch person, and his instructions were not to follow people, but to call the police if he saw something suspicious and let them handle it. And he didn't do that. He stalked Trayvon Martin, and Martin turned on him. And they had a fight, and Zimmerman was losing, and he shot this kid through the heart. That deserves as severe a punishment as the law will allow, in my view.
Yes.
Black Lives Matter took this. It was just a hashtag in those days. The Patrice Colors, I think is how she goes now, who recently spent $4 million of contributions to Black Lives Matter on herself. And I had this experience when I was working with the Black Panther Party. Elaine Brown was driving around in a Mercedes, and she justified it by, Black leaders have to be honored by Mercedes-Benzes as white leaders. In my view, if you're trying to serve poor communities and victim communities, you don't need a Mercedes-Benz, whether you're white or Black.
Yes.
That's not a color issue, but they justify everything that way. We have to live like kings. And you see it, in dictators. They always, like the Castro communists, when they took over, in Nicaragua, the Sandinistas, when they took power, the first thing they did was kick the rich out of their homes and make them their homes.
Yes.
And that tells you what their true principles are. I mean, they could have put poor people in them if they wanted to do something like that, but no, they put themselves in it.
And Mugabe, I mean, my Lord, it was like a hypocrisy.
Yeah, he's a monster. And all of them were monsters. I mean, it has nothing to do with color. It has to do with ideology. If you think you're saving the world, what crime would you not commit and what lie would you not tell? And they do. They believe their own propaganda.
And they were very open. Black Lives Matter founders are very open about we're Marxists. We hate America. We want to destroy America. I mean, do I have that right?
Absolutely. We are trained Marxists. There's no Marxism. I mean, this is so stupid. This is so low level. I mean, it's so ironic. We live in a time when a whole new generation of Black leaders has emerged who are articulate and intelligent. And you have these very low level people who will lie at the drop of a hat. Let me start with why my book is called Our Racial Hoax is Killing America.
Okay.
Let's start first with the mythology that George Floyd was killed, that there was a racial element to the George Floyd killing, that this was white supremacy in action. Derek Chauvin was married to a Black woman. I mean, yeah, you didn't know that.
No, I did not.
Yeah, well, that shows you the real problem, which is our corrupt media that doesn't report these things, and a stupid conservative media that doesn't know how to fight the political wars. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is Keith Ellison, as you know, was a spokesman for Louis Farrakhan, the most notorious racist in the country, and the most powerful, as the biggest racist movement. For 11 years, he was a spokesman for Farrakhan. Wow. He's a far left. He's a supporter of Antifa, this fascist organization that beats up people and kills them, pretending that they are that Antifa is the anti-fascist. So Keith Ellison was the Attorney General of the state of Minneapolis. I mean, when you hear people talk about America as a white supremacist society, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Everybody involved in Minnesota, where George Floyd was killed or died, I'm positive that he died of a drug overdose. He had 4 times the lethal level of fentanyl in his body, and he was screaming, "I can't breathe," when a cop wasn't even touching them, way before Chauvin put his knee on his neck. Everybody's a leftist. The police chief is a Black leftist. The council has 12 Democrats. And the leader of the city council is Keith Ellison's son, a Black Democrat. 12 of the 13 are Democrats, and the 13th is a Green Party member. That's the police department that's supposed to be police brutality, systemic racism. That's just baloney.
Right.
I'll tell you why there's no systemic racism in a second. And by the way, everything that I'm saying, well, I didn't actually know that Derek Chauvin's wife was Black until recently. But everything else is in my book, I Can't Breathe. Keith Ellison was interviewed, as the Minnesota Attorney General, he's the chief prosecutor on the Derek Chauvin George Floyd case. And 60 Minutes had him on and asked him if there was a racial element. If there was a racial element in the death of George Floyd. And Keith Ellison said, "No, we couldn't find one. We looked, but we couldn't find. If this guy couldn't find a racial element, it wasn't there." And actually, the first clue is, and one of these guys there's 3 cops now on trial for aiding and abetting Chauvin. One of them's Black, young Black man who joined the force to reform it. So, and another is Asian. So where's the racial element? So
let me stop you right there, Mr.
Riots that was stoked by Black Lives Matter criminals was a complete hoax. There is no systemic racism in police. There are 18,000 police departments. How do I know this? Because systemic racism, institutional racism, is outlawed by the 1964 Civil Rights Act, also the 14th Amendment and the Constitution, but it wasn't enforced before the 1964 Act. So if there was systemic racism in police departments in this country, there would be a tsunami of lawsuits. When you consider all the black district attorneys, all the mayors of these cities that erupted in violence are black, black Democrats, all of them. It's crazy. So there would be, and people would be making billions of dollars in legal suits if there was, but there isn't. There's been, I think it's the greatest social revolution in the history of the world in the last 50 years. But the left never wants to take yes for an answer.
That's right.
It's insanity. Barack Obama was elected with a majority of white votes, in the people who elected him. Everybody wished, that we would move into a new era where there wasn't racism. And now, ironically, the rampant racism is against white people. Every white person is guilty of being a white supremacist, whether they mean it or not. It's just, it's hard to articulate this. And I hold the media and also Republican politicians who just pussyfoot around these issues. This is terrible.
Right.
So my book studied 26 cases, and there are a couple of tragic incidents. The killing of Tamir Rice. If you read, but I went up, I looked at all the news reports and sources, left and right, and this was a tragic incident. Tamir Rice was didn't look like a 12-year-old. I forget, he was 5'11" and weighed 200 pounds or something. And he was flashing this replica. It looks just like the real thing, a replica of a pistol in a park, and scaring people. And the officers who came to the scene were not told by the dispatcher that the person said he's flashing this gun. We don't know if it's a real gun or not. And the officers asked him to show, he had his hand in his belt, and they asked him to raise his hands and show, in other words, that he wasn't a threat to them. Right. And maybe he didn't understand the command, but he reached in and pulled it out, and they shot him. And they went over, they tried to resuscitate him. They would, you have the officers weeping over what's happened. I mean, these things happen. Yes. Why are there so many black cases? First of all, there's no statistic, none, that shows that blacks are more the victims, unarmed blacks, of police shootings than whites. Quite the contrary. There's usually about twice as many whites that are shot. And it is video of white guys. There's one horrific video of a white guy on his knees begging them not to shoot him. He's unarmed. He says, "I'm unarmed. Please don't kill me." They kill him. Wow. And and that it caused no ripples. It didn't cause the burning down of cities or anything like that. The worst case, the Ahmaud Arbery case, which was the jury decided right in putting those guys in jail. But they weren't on the force. This wasn't the police force in action. These were, the father was an ex-cop, but the guy who shot him was never a cop. So, it's just, and the leaders of BLM are so wicked, is the only way I could describe them. Here's a case they had. Tony McCabe was a transgendered person, and a mental case, as you'll see in a moment, in California. And he had an affair with a white woman. And that white woman had a black son who was 21 years old. one day this loon